Some places hold whispers of stories too dark to forget, whispers that shiver their way into your very skin. Tonight, we travel to a windswept island off the coast of New Zealand, a place so soaked in legends and fear, people no longer speak its name with ease. Welcome to the Nightside Archive. Tonight's journey is through the echoing dread of the island bell. Take a seat, dim the lights. Let's dive into the unknown. If you were a sailor in the early 1800s, there was one stretch of water you'd have wanted to avoid: the dense, foggy waters wrapping around an island known simply as Taroa. Sailors told stories of voices drifting from its cliffs, guttural and broken, like fractured chords of a forgotten song. But the real terror stemmed from the sound of a lone bell, a bell that came not from any human hand, but rather as though the winds themselves dragged it from the sea. We begin in 1823. A whaling ship, the Erebus Queen, was en route to Australia, but diverted course near Taroa due to a sudden storm. Witnesses from nearby mainland settlements recall seeing the ship disappear into the island's claw-like rocky shores. Only one survivor staggered out of Taroa days later, a young deckhand by the name of William Clover. Gaunt, pale, and barely coherent, he mumbled only one phrase repeatedly: "The bell rang for us. It will ring for others." William did not survive the month. His ravings grew increasingly violent, screaming of faces that dripped and the black water that came alive. Neighbors claimed William could be heard muttering to himself late at night, holding his head as though warding off a noise that no one else could hear. When they broke into his modest lodging the night he died, they found him in his bed, his face frozen in a silent scream. The case might have faded into obscurity had it not been for the accounts that followed. Over the years, fishing vessels and trade ships alike documented eerie happenings whenever they attempted proximity to Taroa. Compasses spinning uncontrollably, fog billowing in monstrous shapes, and, inevitably, the low, resonant toll of a bell. Curiously, every vessel that documented the sound suffered casualties, if not promptly, then in the weeks ensuing. The villagers from the mainland spoke darkly of old Maori warnings tied to Taroa. Before colonization, the island had been used by certain iwi tribes as a burial ground, but not for ordinary members of the tribe. This place was reserved strictly for those considered cursed or dangerous, individuals who, in their lifetimes, were deemed so hateful they risked poisoning the community, even in death. While the island was rendered tapu, or sacred and forbidden, to prevent tampering, colonial-era sailors and settlers paid little heed to the lore. Many ventured to Taroa in pursuit of wild goats rumored to roam the island, or to scavenge materials for cooking and tools. Within a year of such intrusions, strange illnesses befell the raiders. Feverish seizures accompanied by the sensation of hearing bells was commonly reported before their deaths. By 1891, Taroa had become subject to academic curiosity. A prominent New Zealand historian, Dr. Eleanor Graves, led an expedition to the island under strict government permission. It was to be her life's fatal endeavor. Graves recounted, in notes recovered upon her lifeless body, an item of particular fascination: a bell made of tarnished bronze, partially submerged in sand directly near Taroa's shoreline. Graves wrote feverishly of the overwhelming urge to touch it, noting that every participant in the expedition heard its notes that shook the membranes of thought itself. On the final page of her journal, dated 7 days into the trip, The chilling words were found scratched unevenly. The bell chooses. We do not leave. We cannot hide. None of the academics aboard the expedition survived. Modern historians have attempted to rationalize the events surrounding Taroa's bell. Some blame psychological phenomena exacerbated by isolation, drawing comparisons to other maritime legends. Others point to environmental anomalies, perhaps caused by rare geysers or underwater seismic activity interfering with surrounding sounds. But survivors, those who fleetingly glimpsed the island but escaped its purported curse, dismiss these feeble remedies to sense-making. "I smelled something burnt," recounts Glenn Travis, a fisherman-turned-amateur sleuth who dedicated his years to studying Taroa. "Like wood singed fresh off a fire. That odor hit us while we were still a mile off its shores. Then, the bell, the clearest, damnedest sound you'd expect from some cathedral, only heavier. Like it carried more than sound, like it carried punishment." Travis and his partner, Sam, both survived the encounter, but Sam claims he hasn't heard silence since. He describes hearing faint, untraceable echoes each evening. Doctors equate this symptom with tinnitus, but Sam's insistence thickens horror. "Doc says tinnitus. Thing is, tinnitus doesn't whisper words, doesn't cough laughter straight into your ear." By the turn of the 20th century, Taroa's location was quietly removed from passenger ship maps and many official nautical routes. Though not formally declared prohibited territory, local authorities grew increasingly adamant that its proximity should be avoided. At present, few in New Zealand openly discuss or acknowledge the story of Taroa, relegating talk of it to casual folklore. Despite this, rogue adventurers continue to set course for the island, armed with modern tech and bolstered by skepticism over stories hundreds of years old. A final piece of testimony worth recounting comes from one such expedition in 2014, led by documentarian Lionel Casey. Casey's handheld footage, streaming during an overcast day at sea, with the island's peak looming gray in mist, shows early confidence and scientific explanations behind supposed fears. "Resonance," Casey explains to his camera, grinning smugly. "It's all about resonance pockets underwater creating auditory hallucinations." The footage takes a horrific twist as Casey begins coughing hours later, dropping the camera during his attempt to stand. Audio analysis of the recording confirms the faint tolling of a bell after Casey abandons the scene. No human hand appears in the footage post-collapse, nor was he seen again. Today, sailors still give Taroa a wide berth. Have its spirits finally found eternal peace? Or does that bell simply await the one who'll bear its terrifying call? Like old William muttered, "The bell rang for us. It will ring for others." Remember, curiosity has a price. What would you do if you heard the distant chime of a bell calling your name? As they say when voyaging near forbidden waters, sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes silence is survival. Until next time in the Nightside Archive, good night and stay safe.